Welcome to the BroadCast, a political lifestyle podcast. Yeah, well, what an introduction. I'm Shane Broad, a Labor MP in the Tasmanian Parliament. Now, why am I calling this a political lifestyle podcast? It's because when people ask me what it's like being a politician, the way I describe it is it's more of a lifestyle than a job. And I'll go into this more as I go. Basically, in this podcast, I'd like to lift the lid on what it's actually like being a politician, what I get up to, how I make decisions and so on. And importantly, how do I fit everything in terms of work, family, and of course, leisure. I'd also like to get in guests and talk through issues and get different perspectives on those issues and how people are making up their own mind. And maybe we'll get into some arguments. But look, I haven't got any guests in today, so that's going to have to wait. This podcast is basically, this first podcast is basically an introduction. So no guests, but of course, if you like this kind of content, remember to like and subscribe. There we go. How's that? So this was my first go at all this. I've got to work on all the buttons and stuff, but bear with me. But anyway, I think maybe what we could do is, before I really get stuck into things, let's just give you a bit of a background. So I'm obviously a politician in Tasmania, so it's the state that's hanging off the bottom of Australia in the Tasmanian Parliament, and I actually am in the seat of Braddon. Now, Braddon makes up the northwest corner of Tasmania, including King Island up here, which is actually not in quite the right spot. But so Braddon, you can see, is quite a huge electorate. It takes up, probably about a quarter of the state, and it's very diverse. And where we go. And this is where my office is in Devonport, but I certainly cover all of Braddon. Also in Tasmania, we have what's called Hare Clerk. So that means I am one of actually 7 members representing this electorate. I mean, we can go into a whole podcast just on that if anybody's interested. I'm pretty sure nobody is, but if so, just pop something in the comments and maybe I can go through Hare Clerk and how it works and doesn't work and everything else like that. So that's my electorate, the electorate of Braddon. It's quite big, quite diverse. There's lots of different towns and in the Tasmanian Parliament. This is the Tasmanian Parliament, sort of a beautiful sandstone building in Hobart, which is, a bit away. So it's actually about a 3-hour drive from where I live. So there's a bit of time in the car, but at least it's not like being a politician in Canberra where you're always almost 2 plane flights away from getting home. The best thing about it is that if something happens or I need to get home, I can. This is the Tasmanian Parliament. It's actually quite an intimate parliament. There are 35 members. There used to be 25 when I first started, but now there are 35, and this is where we sit. And we're actually quite close to each other, so it can get a bit willing at times, but there we go. Now, this is the current makeup of the Tasmanian Parliament after the last election. So you need 18 to have a majority in a 35-member parliament. Currently, the Liberals have got 14. I'm a member of the Labor Party. We've got 10, so we're in opposition. The Greens have got 5, and then there's a whole bunch of independents. So this is actually making Parliament quite unstable. And we can go into that again in another podcast. But what I want to do in this podcast is not really hammer people with the politics, but just sort of give people a bit of an insight in what it's like being a politician rather than say, oh, this is the way you should think. And, of course, this is the family. So I've been in Parliament for coming up to 9 years, and this was actually a photo of the day I was elected. So I was actually elected on a recount, which is a Hare Clerk thing. And this is the day I got elected, so we were in a bit of a rush that day, dashing off down to Hobart to be sworn into Parliament the next day. And I've got a photo of that up in my office, both here and down in Hobart, just to remind me that this is where it all started. And also, as the kids grow older, this reminds me of how young they were when I first started. So I'll just give you a bit more about me. So, one of the things about being a politician is you sort of got no idea on why people make decisions. So I think if I give you a bit of background about me, then maybe you can start to understand, why I make decisions and where my perspectives come from. So here's me. I'm actually the little blonde kid here up in the being carried there by my father. So I'm the second youngest. There's my other brother Steve, and then brother James, brother and sister Kerry Ann. We're in a paddock of poppy. So I grew up on a farm. Probably had a pretty sort of when I look back, it was probably a great way to grow up. But definitely coming from a farm gives me a different perspective than people who grew up in town. Yeah, all sorts of things are happening on the farm. Like here's riding a horse and stuff with my brother, and we were very, very active and we got up to lots of things. But also, one of the things that happened was when I was just about to turn 18, I became an exchange student and dashed off to a place called the Faroe Islands. And here I am. You might not recognise me because I've got a fair bit of hair at this stage, but there's some more hair shots coming that might surprise you even more. But I ended up going with AFS, American Field Service it was, exchange organisation, and they sent me to basically the other side of the world. So the Faroe Islands is way up in the North Atlantic, so halfway between Scotland and Iceland and halfway between Iceland and Norway, sort of way up there. Nobody's heard of it. It's an amazing place, and I certainly had made some lifelong friends and had some fantastic experiences. Absolutely wonderful place to live, but very remote and, not exactly a tropical climate, but still a fantastic place. So this is sort of the village that I lived in, Sirigurta. So it's about 300 people. So being a 18-year-old Australian, they all knew what I got up to before I did. And just to give you a bit of this is the Christmas time. You get a bit of snow, but the snow didn't sort of lay deep all year. But anyway, fantastic place, and that certainly had an influence on my my thinking. And here's my class. Where am I? I'm about there with sunglasses on. You probably can't see me very well, but I'm still very good friends with a lot of these people and still in contact. So that's one good thing about being an exchange student. The other thing, here's my fellow exchange students at the time. So we had Claudia, she was from Colombia. Then we had Prom Pisanu, Prom Sivopolop, he was from Thailand, and Ilsa, she was from Latvia. So definitely a lot of different perspectives. There were four of us and on exchange in the Faroes, and also there were another guy from America and another guy from Africa from another exchange organisation. So we basically covered most of the world in terms of regions, and I certainly learned a lot about other cultures and how to deal with people. And basically I learnt that everybody's the same. Everybody has the same sorts of fears and thoughts, and we're more alike than not alike. So that's certainly a perspective I've carried through into being a politician. And here's a very shocking picture of me with a fair bit of hair and even some curls. So one of my daughters has curly hair, and when they ask where it comes from, I said it's me, and everyone sort of always says, well, I don't see much evidence of that, which is fairly true. But at one point I did have lovely curly hair. Unfortunately, it all ended up falling out. But anyway, we move on. This is when I was actually leaving the Faroe Islands to come back, and it was as you can see the date there, and some friends of mine, and just about to leave. And I've certainly been back a few times, but that's something, that experience as an 18-year-old taught me a hell of a lot, and certainly made me learn a lot about myself, give me a lot of confidence, and I've certainly taken that on into being a politician. So when I got back from being overseas, I worked on the farm for a few years with my dad, and then decided I'd go off to uni, and I did agricultural science at university. So the reason I did that was obviously to get an education and probably come back and be a better farmer. But later on, I also was very keen on the sport of rowing. So that was probably one of the main reasons to go to Hobart, was to actually train for rowing in a better way with a better coach and a bit more opportunity. And certainly I love rowing as a sport, and actually became quite good at it. So over the years, representing Tasmania, winning races for Tasmania, interstate races, and then also I was on the Australian rowing team for a number of years, and that was certainly something that I'll always remember, something that I'm very proud to have achieved. It seems like a long time ago now, but it's something that certainly gives me a perspective when it comes to being a politician, and I can talk about that at some other stage as well. When I think about things like how to plan, I sort of take the athlete mindset in trying to figure out where I want to go and then work backwards from there. So just the same as you would going to the World Championships, you think, well, I want to win. How much training do I need to do? when's the selection regattas, when are the competitions, and then you can break it down into segments, into quarters, into months, into weeks, and then into days. And that's certainly the way that I approach strategy. It's something that I learned a lot from when I was in the Australian team. And it was quite successful. I won both bronze and silver medals at World Championships. Didn't quite get to the gold medal. This is a race here from 2003 in Seville. This one was in Milan, and we just got the silver medal, and I couldn't have done any more because, as you probably can't quite tell, my teammates are actually holding me up because I couldn't stand. But I absolutely learnt a hell of a lot from rowing, and it's something that I'm very proud of. Then I came back and obviously also was an agricultural scientist, so I kept on going through uni and it's something that also is very good to have. I think university is a good place to go when you want to learn a lot of stuff. And the ag science degree that I did in Hobart was actually very good because it covered a lot of ground, covered a lot of topics, and basically has meant that I've been able to crap my way into a heap of jobs because the degree is so broad. Anyway, so I did a bit of work with some consultants and so on, and then decided I'd come back and do a PhD. So when you do a PhD in agricultural science, so a doctorate, you can do things basically what I tried to do was find out ways to reduce chemical use in vegetable production. So how can you try and do things by using diversity? So in this case, you can see different treatments that I've set up, so cover crops and companion planting and so on. If anybody's really interested, I could even do a podcast about that. And I certainly, talk about it every now and then. People are interested, but, pretty much nobody is. But we move on. So you can set up treatments like this, and then what you can do is you can do really amazing, really riveting stuff like counting insect eggs on broccoli plants. I almost put myself to sleep. But what happens then is you can actually draw graphs like this. It's obviously very interesting, these graphs. And then they give you a PhD. And then that's basically me and my dad. I don't think I've got a photo of my mother and at the same time. But anyway, you get a PhD, and then they start to call you doctor. So I'm a doctor of agricultural science, not a medical doctor, and that often quite gets people confused. But it took 8 years to get, so I call myself a doctor because that's actually my title. And I think, well, bugger it, it took me 8 years to get it. I may as well use it. And then after that, I worked for consultants and so on, but I got a job with CSIRO, and what that meant, I was doing catchment nutrient modelling. Again, very riveting for people out there, but basically you take an area like this, you identify where all the rivers and stuff are, and then you can put it into a program like this, and you can figure out where all the little bits of the catchment are, and then you can work out a model for that. You're looking at the terrain and you figure out the flows, and then you overlay that with land use. So you figure out what sort of land uses there are, whether it's cropping or forest or cattle or whatever, and then you can make it a model, and from there you can draw graphs like this, and then you can try and figure out how much each particular hectare, using some very complicated maths, you can work out how much nutrient comes off different land uses. So anyway, I did that for a while. Absolutely. Yeah, I know you're really excited about this. But what I'm trying to explain is that as a scientist, I suppose I've got a different perspective, and I work through things as well in a scientific fashion. So trying to understand issues, trying to get into the detail of things, and then trying to explain it in a very simple way, which I probably haven't done explaining total phosphorus generation rates. But again, if anybody's really super interested, put it in the comments and we can do a pod about that. But maybe not today because, I think you'll probably be a great podcast to put people to sleep. But anyway, I still really enjoy rowing, so I'm still having a crack at that. I'm a master now, so I'm over 50, believe it or not, and so I go to Masters regattas and still really enjoy it. Enjoy the companionship, enjoy being in crews, and enjoy the exercise. It's something that I've been working on. Otherwise, as a politician, there's a tendency to get really fat really quickly. You'd be amazed how, well, probably people who are my age wouldn't be amazed, but it's amazing how quickly you can put weight on and how things can get a little bit out of control. And the other thing about exercise, rowing and other things that I like doing, like running, is that it's very good for your mental health. So it's a good way to break out and to have a think about things and do something that is not necessarily politics. So it's my time, I suppose you could say. And I really enjoy running and rowing. And the other thing I really like doing is bushwalking. So getting out and about. And Tasmania is a beautiful place. We've got lots of beautiful things to see and lots of great areas to get away from. I'm probably not showing pictures of other people and all these things because it's probably better to ask them before I do it. But one of the things about bushwalking is getting out there with groups. I did the overland track with my family just recently, and it's a fantastic way to get out and about. Bushwalking is just a fantastic thing, especially in a beautiful place like Tasmania. You get to see things that are pretty hard to get to, like this waterfall here and so on. Now, I like bushwalking and rowing, and here's when I did the Southwest track that I actually had to do both, so we had to row that dinghy from one side to the other. So there we go. There's two things that I really like doing and doing it at the same time. How amazing was that? Beautiful weather too, beautiful trip. It's a great way to get away, and the best thing is there's no phone reception, so it's probably the only time that I really get leave where I'm not contactable. So it's real time off. And then also it's trying to balance spending time with my family. So here's the family for one of my election photos, but it's trying to balance, And one of the things I really like to get to in this podcast is to talk about how I fit all these things in, and how that political lifestyle is something that is actually, something that you have to manage. You have to manage it so that your family doesn't lose out, as well as your job, and that you give enough time for yourself and you can do some exercise so you don't turn into a bit of a balloon. So I suppose what's it like being a poly? Okay, so this is the sort of thing that I'd really like to get into in this podcast and give you a bit of insight into. So what's it actually like being a politician? Well, just for a start, there's definitely some pros and cons. So there's odd hours. So some of the things that are a bit harder, I suppose, is there's odd hours, there's lots of events, there's lots of out of hours, and you're always pretty much on. And what I mean by that is, quite often I'll get stopped in the supermarket or in the street by someone who wants to have a chat or talk about an issue. And this happens all the time, even when I'm out with the family. So sometimes, say, for example, taking the kids to the cinema and someone wants to talk to me, and, it's pretty hard not to be rude. I mean, they're wanting to have a chat about something they feel quite passionate about, but trying to manage that. And I know it does annoy the kids sometimes. And like I said, one of the reasons probably why I really enjoy bushwalking is because it's the only time that I'm really truly on leave, because there's no mobile reception. So one of the things about being a politician is you're really trying to stay in touch, not only with people and your party and your fellow members, but also keeping on top of issues and so on. Checking emails, checking messages, checking social media, putting stuff online. And it is pretty constant. So it's something that it's really hard to actually get away from unless you go somewhere bushwalking where there's no reception, and then you're out of contact. So you have to have that time off unless you take a sat phone with you, which would be absolutely crazy. But it's actually free time, and that's why I really enjoy it. Now, one of the other things about being a politician, obviously, is there's the cut and thrust of Parliament. As they say, the old show business for ugly people, as it's been described. And the other thing that's probably quite difficult about being a politician is you have a pretty harsh 5-week performance review every time there's an election. And in Tasmania, we've been having a lot of these lately. So there's supposed to be a state election every 4 years. Instead, what we've had is like 4 elections in 7 years, which has been pretty nasty. And we've got an unstable parliament, so who knows how long this one will last. Hopefully it'll last 3 or 4 years. so that we can not have like 18 months like the last one, because that's a lot of stress and strain, not just on politicians, but also on your family. Like you come in and say, okay, kids, and talk to my wife about it. There's going to be an election. You're basically not going to see me for 5 weeks. And then there's and understandable, because it is a strain. Also, one thing more and more that is a bit of a negative is actually social media, because it can be pretty harsh with massive pile-ons. And what I've been noticing is trolling has been getting more and more common. And then there's things like the party politics. So the way that I describe this is I sort of see myself almost as being part of a franchise. So you've got to do things for the brand, but there are also many things you can do independently where you're your own boss. And this is certainly the case with my day-to-day diary. But there are obviously things that I have to do for the party and toe the line, in things like go to branch meetings and, of course, attend Parliament. But there are actually some benefits of being a politician. There are some pros. One of the things is that I actually get to help people, which can be very rewarding. Every now and then you get a big win and you can change someone's life, literally. So that is a fantastic thing to be able to do, and very rewarding in itself. You get to serve your community, which also can be very rewarding. You can make people's views and opinions, you can make them heard, and you're also involved in decision making. And there's also a lot of tire kicking. One of the things that I really enjoy is going to different businesses and going to different places and seeing how things work and what's going on. So I find that very interesting as well. And I have a voice, and it means that I can get noticed and have influence more so than other people, which sometimes I think is actually a bad thing. That if me saying it gets more action than some poor punter who's had trouble on an issue, then that's probably not a good reflection. But it's something that I certainly like doing, is getting stuck in and helping people solve their problems. Another bonus can be flexibility, really. So, for example, if there's a family event that I'd like to go to, for example, the kids have an athletics carnival, if I've got enough notice, then I can put it in the diary, and more than likely I can attend and go to that, unless, of course, something like Parliament sitting. So that sort of flexibility is good, but that's sort of weighed off by the stuff that happens on weekends and of a night where I'm away from the family. So maybe I should probably just, as I start to wind up the first broadcast, just why am I a Labor politician? Now, I'm a Labor politician because I really believe in a fair go. So, people in the past have said, look, you grew up on a farm, you should be a Conservative or you should be a Liberal, because that's the way farmers vote, and that's never been the case. My family's always been Labor people, and a bit of an outlier in the farm. But so if you looked at my upbringing and even my career, you'd probably expect me to be a Liberal, but I'm not. Being a scientist, sometimes people think that I should be a Green or some sort of Green-style politician. But again, I really believe in the Labor values, mainly around getting a fair go so that everyone can achieve and no one gets left behind. Also, I like politics because I really like solving problems and building things. So they're the two things that I really enjoy. What I mean by that is solving problems. So when people come in and they've got an issue or there's a policy issue or some big challenge, how do you actually solve that? And the same with building things is how do you build up the community? How do you get from where we are now to where we should be in the future? And I'd really like to sort of go through that process in these podcasts and have a bit more of a chat about it, about maybe working through some ideas on how to make certainly my patch a better place, and sort of go through the issues of why is it difficult to make decisions, why is it difficult to come up with good policy, and why is it difficult to actually get those good policies into action. So that's the sort of stuff I'd really like to be talking about in this podcast. Like I said before, I'd really like to get in some guests, someone a little bit more animated than myself there in the second chair. But let's get some debates going. Let's get some arguments. Let's toss around some ideas, and let's get this broadcast. So we'll get things moving. But like I said, like if you really enjoy this sort of content, then I'd really ask you to like and subscribe. See if the button's working. So click on the broadcast. I'll try and put this on YouTube, maybe on Spotify, and crisscross on my socials. But this has been the first episode of the broadcast. I really like to get people in, have conversations, give you a bit of background, and work through problems so that you get a bit of an understanding of what it's like to be a politician and the lifestyle of a politician and how everything fits into place. So until the next one, let's see you again. I better do a plug. So like and subscribe. And then till then, this is the end of the broadcast. See you next time.